if the tax we have to pay on our retirement in the US is greater than the 10% of the NHR in Portugal, and in brackets she has that this includes Social Security, 401k, IRAs, will we have to pay any additional tax in Portugal? Or, according to the double tax agreements, in this case, we'd only have to pay US tax and no Portugal tax. We get this question every single time. So, Augusto?
So, first of all, thank you, Darren, for the invitation, and thank all the participants. So, with respect to the pension income, for those that move now to Portugal, the NHR regime foresees a taxation of 10% of pension income from foreign source. There are some exceptions. For example, in case of benefits from Social Security or similar regime for public servants. But in general terms, those cases of Social Security benefits and other pension products will be subject to the 10% flat rate here in Portugal.
Right. So then from Paula's point of view, I can tell she's been doing some research, so she's been doing some reading, so she's aware of the double tax agreement. So what we have to do from a US point of view is take that 10%, assuming that she has worked in the private sector, so as Augusto's pointed out. And it comes back to the definition of pension. So in the US, we have a wider definition of pension, but in Portugal, there's a specific definition of pension, right? Which means that for the purposes of enjoying that tax-free, so no Portugal tax, no 10% tax, that pension has to rise from public service. So you must have worked for the government, whether it be state or federal, then that pension, the Social Security and the IRA and the 401k, then it would be free of tax. Otherwise, it's going to be taxed. Now, you will not be double taxed, so don't worry about that. And the reason why is that whoever's doing your US side, Portugal gets first bite, assuming that you worked in the private sector. So Portugal do its 10%. Then you can recategorize that income. It's some tax alchemy that we do on a Form 1116 on the US return that allows you to take that 10% tax as a deduction against any taxes owed to the US and to the IRS in the US. So you're not going to be taxed double. You're not going to be double taxed. So don't worry about that. But please bear in mind that Portugal has a very specific treatment and definition and concept of a pension, and it is not as wide as the US, and it does not include pension that's derived from work in the private sector. So I know this causes a lot of misunderstanding and controversy, but that's what it is. So Paula has 3 more questions, so let's jump on to question number 2. So Social Security, 401k, and IRA income received in the US taxed entirely at 10%, or portions of this type of income taxed differently? Augusto, I think you answered that, but before, you wanna?
Okay, just one remark that has to do with own contributions or tax contributions to these products, because the idea is that in case the pension derives from own contributions at the surrender or the moment that you receive the pension, only the income would be subject to taxation and not the full amount of the pension, because once the contributions have been made directly by in this case the taxpayer, the capital included in the pension income should be excluded from taxation.
That's a great point. So typically, it becomes important that the taxpayer has kept detailed records. Because as tax professionals, what we have to do is bifurcate the income. So we have to divide it into, as Augusto says, between what was your contribution as an employee, what was your employee contribution, and what was the growth in the fund. Because that 10% applies to the growth in the fund. Again, assuming that you work for the private sector, which obviously many people do. So just that growth in the fund becomes taxable to Portugal, not the entire amount. But just to reemphasize, it's important that you get the distinction between work done for public service and work done for private sector. Okay. Question 3 in Paula's 4-part questions. Question 3. During the 10 years of the NHR, are there any deductions allowed on the amount of Social Security, IRA, and 401k? So basically US retirement income. If yes, which ones? So I think, Augusto, you already kind of touched on that. So the only deduction typically would be the bifurcation of the income to determine the pension income to determine what part was the employee contribution that you originally made versus what part is the return on the investment. Am I correct? Is there any other deduction aside from that?
No, unless we are talking about general deductions to the taxpayers that are applicable in Portugal to any taxpayer with the NHR regime or not. I don't know if the question would be in that respect, because we can have different tax deductions by the year end when we file the tax return. Basically, depends on some expenses that taxpayers may have related to health. Etc. Well,
that's a good point. Typically, what would be like the top 3 deductions on a typical Portugal tax return? Just ballpark.
I would say the health expenses would be most relevant. There are expenses related with rented houses, for example, and also expenses for general personal expenses that have a cap of 250 euros per year, but it is what it is.
Okay, so that's kind of low. So it's really health and rental. So this is if you have rental income, right?
2 examples. Rental, no, if you pay rent for a rented house, for example.
Right. Okay, so it'll be the big 2. Okay, great. Thank you for that. And the fourth part,
and of course, we have also deductions for children, related to children and education expenses. It's also
okay. So health, rental accommodation, and kids education. So that might be could be 3 big ones. Okay. Hopefully that answers Paula's question.
And there is also a fixed deduction for pension income. It's circa 4,000 euros that is applicable.
So it's like a standard deduction kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you're a 6, 7, or 8-figure investor, entrepreneur, or business owner who needs a tailor-made solution from a qualified team of professionals, we can help you achieve the international lifestyle, the freedom, and even the tax savings you're looking for. Visit us at htj.tax and live that international life.